My name is Anna Parker, and I'm 28 years old. 3 nights ago, my mother-in-law called me a fat pig in front of 500 of New York's wealthiest elite. Her golden son laughed. My husband stood silent. The entire Whitmore ballroom erupted in cruel laughter at my expense. But when her husband, my father-in-law, saw my face clearly for the first time that evening, his champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. The sound still echoes in my memory, along with his panicked words. Wait, aren't you? Before I tell you how one email turned their mockery into their worst nightmare, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. I'm curious where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to that unforgettable night when dignity met documentation. The Whitmore family ruled Manhattan's upper echelons like modern royalty. Their penthouse occupied the entire 80th floor of a building where the private elevator alone cost more to maintain than most people's yearly salary. Every surface gleamed with Italian marble. Every wall displayed original art. A genuine Monet hung casually in the powder room, as if million-dollar masterpieces were mere wallpaper. Victoria Whitmore, my mother-in-law, embodied this excess. That night, she wore a custom Chanel haute couture gown that cost more than my teaching salary for 3 years. Her Cartier necklace, the one she called casual jewelry, could fund an entire school district's art program. She moved through her domain like a queen surveying peasants, and in her eyes, that's exactly what I was. For 3 years of marriage to James, I'd endured her subtle cruelties, the forgotten invitations, the accidental exclusions from family portraits, the constant suggestions about miracle diet programs she'd heard about from her trainer. James always said I was being too sensitive, that his mother meant well. I'd once refused her wedding gift, a check for $1 million with strings attached so thick they might as well have been chains. She'd never forgiven me for that. In her world, everyone had a price, and my refusal to be bought was a personal insult. The Whitmore Industries headquarters occupied 40 floors of prime Manhattan real estate, their logo visible from both rivers. $2 billion in assets, built over 3 generations. Victoria ran it all with manicured fingers and an iron will. But empires built on arrogance always have weak foundations. That night I would show them mine was built on something far more solid, legal documentation. What the society pages didn't print was that James held only the CFO title, a glorified accountant in his mother's empire. The real power, the CEO position, remained firmly in Victoria's grasp, despite Richard Whitmore being the official chairman. She'd maneuvered this arrangement through careful board manipulation and strategic alliances. Marcus, the younger son, was Victoria's true heir apparent. Golden Child didn't begin to describe it. He was her creation, molded from birth to take over. Harvard MBA at 25, engaged to a senator's daughter, and blessed with the kind of ruthless ambition that made his mother proud. Every family dinner became a stage for Marcus to demonstrate his superiority, while James counted numbers in the corner. I'd seen the emails between Victoria and her lawyer about restructuring family assets. The subject lines were careful, professional. Estate planning adjustments, and succession timeline optimization. But I knew what they really meant. She was planning to force James out entirely, to pressure him into divorcing me, the unsuitable wife, so Marcus could ascend without any embarrassing attachments to the middle class. 3 weeks ago, I'd overheard her on a call in the study. The moment James signs those divorce papers, we activate the restructuring. Marcus takes his rightful place, and we never have to pretend that teacher belongs here again. I'd stood frozen outside that mahogany door, my hand still raised to knock. Inside my bag, my phone had buzzed with an email notification from my own lawyer. The subject line read simply, "Inheritance matters, urgent." I hadn't opened it then, too shaken by Victoria's words, but I kept my silence. I smiled at dinners. I endured the insults disguised as concern. Because sometimes the best response to someone planning your destruction is to let them think they're succeeding. 2 weeks before the gala, my world had shifted on its axis. My father, whom I rarely mentioned to the Whitmores, had passed away suddenly. Charles Parker wasn't just any businessman. He was the founder and CEO of Zenith Holdings, a quietly powerful investment firm that most people never heard of, but every major corporation desperately needed. The Whitmores knew I had a father in business. They didn't know he was that Parker. Zenith Holdings controlled strategic partnerships worth billions, including Whitmore Industries' most critical contract, a $500 million exclusive distribution deal that kept Victoria's empire profitable. Without it, Whitmore would hemorrhage money within months. The board's official appointment letter had arrived the day after the funeral, sealed and notarized. I was now CEO of Zenith Holdings, inheriting not just my father's position, but his 67% controlling stake. The announcement wouldn't go public for another month, giving me time to transition. I'd sat in my car outside the Whitmore building, reading that letter 3 times. The board had been unanimous. My father had been grooming me for this for years, though I'd chosen teaching as my passion. They didn't know about my MBA from Wharton, earned at night while teaching days. They didn't know about the summers spent in my father's office, learning every detail of corporate governance. The letter sat in my home safe now, waiting. Along with the partnership contract between Zenith and Whitmore, specifically Clause 14.3, any executive officer found guilty of public discrimination, harassment, or conduct unbecoming of corporate leadership shall result in immediate partnership termination. My father had insisted on that clause. Dignity in business, he'd always said, is non-negotiable. I touched the safe's door that morning of the gala, knowing that tonight, finally, his words would have teeth. The Whitmore Annual Charity Gala was Manhattan's social event of the season. $10 million raised for underprivileged youth, though the champagne budget alone could have sent 100 kids to college. The ballroom at the St. Regis gleamed with crystal baccarat chandeliers, each one worth more than most homes. Red velvet curtains framed the stage where Victoria would perform her annual show of benevolence. 500 guests filled the room, senators, CEOs, old money, and new, the kind of people whose approval Victoria craved like oxygen. She'd planned every detail for months, from the gold-leafed invitations to the Michelin-starred menu. "Family presentation time," Victoria announced through her microphone, her voice honey-sweet with practiced charm. "The Whitmore family would like to thank you all for your generous support." She called Richard first, then Marcus with his fiancée. James was summoned next, walking stiffly in his Tom Ford tuxedo. Then silence. I stood at our table, waiting. The spotlight swung past me, then returned, harsh and blinding. "Oh," Victoria said, as if just remembering something unpleasant. "And this is Anna, my son's project. We all have our charity cases, don't we?" The laughter started as a titter, then grew. I heard someone whisper, "Is that really the best he could do?" Another voice added, "Money can't buy taste, apparently." I kept my face neutral, my hands steady on my clutch, the one containing my phone with that precious email. James stared at his shoes. Marcus smirked openly. "Come up here, dear," Victoria commanded. "Let everyone see you properly." The walk to that stage felt endless, 500 pairs of eyes dissecting every step. But I climbed those stairs knowing something they didn't. Charity was about to flow in an unexpected direction. The microphone caught every word with crystal clarity. Victoria stood beside me, her Chanel perfume thick enough to choke on, and addressed her audience with theatrical disgust. "So this is the fat pig we have to tolerate in our family." The words rang through the ballroom's perfect acoustics. Someone gasped. Most laughed. Phones appeared, recording the spectacle for tomorrow's social media feast. Marcus stepped forward, champagne flute raised. "At least pigs have value. They produce bacon. What does she produce? Finger paintings?" His Harvard-polished voice carried perfectly, though I suppose someone has to teach the poor kids their place in the world. The laughter crescendoed. A woman in Valentino actually applauded. James stood frozen at the platform's edge, his face pale, but his feet planted. He wouldn't look at me. 3 years of marriage, and he couldn't meet my eyes while his family flayed me alive. "James," I said quietly, but the microphone caught it. "Don't make this harder," he muttered, still staring at the floor. Victoria leaned into the microphone again. "You know, we tried to help her, offered to pay for nutritionists, trainers, even surgery. But you can't polish, well, you know the saying." Richard Whitmore stood near the bar, his expression unreadable. But I noticed his knuckles were white around his whiskey tumbler. His eyes kept flicking between Victoria and me, a frown deepening across his distinguished features. "Mrs. Whitmore," I began, my voice steady despite the burning in my chest. "Oh, she speaks," Victoria announced. "Everyone quiet down. Let's hear what wisdom the public school teacher has to share with us." I smiled then, a real smile, because she'd just given me the perfect opening. "I was only going to say," I paused, letting the silence build, "that Mr. Whitmore Sr. might want to sit down for this." Victoria's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Oh, this is rich. She's going to make announcements now?" She reached into her Hermes clutch and pulled out a manila envelope. "Actually, perfect timing. I have an announcement too." She extracted the papers with theatrical flair. "Divorce documents, pre-filled, very generous, $50,000 for 3 years of tolerance. All you need to do is sign, dear, right here, right now, in front of everyone. Then you can waddle back to whatever bridge and tunnel burrow you crawled out from." The crowd erupted. "Sign! Sign! Sign!" The chant built like a wave. Marcus conducted them like a symphony, his hands keeping time. "Mom," James finally spoke, but so quietly only those of us on stage heard. "Maybe not here." "Not here?" Victoria wheeled on him. "Where better? These people deserve to know we're fixing our mistake, that the Whitmore name won't be sullied any longer by this." She gestured at me. "Embarrassment." She thrust the papers at me. Marcus offered his Mont Blanc pen, the limited edition one with diamonds in the clip. "Here you go, teacher. I'm sure you've never held anything worth this much before." The crowd kept chanting. Someone shouted, "Take the money and run, honey!" But I noticed Richard had moved closer to the stage. His phone was in his hand, and his face had gone very pale. He was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, recognition mixed with dawning horror. "Before I sign anything," I said, letting my voice carry through the microphone, "there's something everyone here should know, especially you, Mr. Whitmore." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Richard, tell her to sign. End this circus." But Richard was already climbing the stage stairs, his phone clutched like a lifeline. If you've ever been judged by your appearance or bank account, you'll understand what happened next. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's legal. Keep watching to see how one document changed everything. And if this resonates with you, that subscribe button helps more people find stories of quiet triumph over public humiliation. "Sign it now," Victoria commanded, her voice sharp enough to cut crystal. "In front of everyone. Show them you know your place." The ballroom fell silent except for the whisper of expensive fabric as people leaned forward. This was better than any Broadway show. Marcus positioned himself behind me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Tom Ford, of course. Everything had to have a label, a price tag, a status symbol. "Just sign it, Anna." James's words hit harder than any insult. 3 years of marriage reduced to 5 words of cowardice. "It's for the best." The pen felt heavy in my hand. $50,000 and freedom from this family. Some would call it a bargain. The crowd certainly thought so. Whispers of "take it" and "she's lucky to get anything" floated through the air. I looked at the divorce papers. Standard language, nothing surprising. Except for one small detail I'd noticed. the date. They'd been drawn up 3 weeks ago, the same day I'd overheard Victoria's phone call about restructuring. You know what's interesting? I said, my voice steady through the microphone. These papers were prepared before tonight, before this public humiliation, which means this whole show. Sign them! Victoria snatched the microphone. Security! 2 guards appeared at the stage edges, but Richard Whitmore was already there, and his voice boomed without any amplification. Stop! Everyone froze. Richard Whitmore hadn't raised his voice in public in 20 years. He was staring at his phone, then at me, then back at his phone. Anna Parker, he said slowly, as if tasting each syllable. Your maiden name, Parker. Yes, I said simply. His face had gone from pale to ashen. Charles Parker's daughter. You're Charles Parker's daughter. Victoria laughed nervously. So what? Lots of people are named Parker. But Richard was already typing frantically on his phone, pulling up something that made him stagger. I set down the unsigned divorce papers and walked to the microphone with the kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly what's about to happen. 3 years of silence were about to break. Before I sign anything, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of that gilded ballroom, Mr. Whitmore Sr. should know who he's actually asking to leave his family. Richard's phone shook in his hand. He'd found it. The announcement that wouldn't go public for 2 more weeks. But board members talk, and rumors travel at the speed of privilege. What's going on? Victoria demanded. Richard, what are you looking at? I pulled out my own phone, where the email had been waiting. 2 weeks ago, I became CEO of Zenith Holdings, your exclusive partner, the company that holds your distribution rights, your supply chain, your entire profit margin. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. That's impossible, Marcus sputtered. You're a teacher, you're nobody. I'm a teacher by choice, I corrected. But I'm also Charles Parker's daughter, and as of his passing, I control 67% of Zenith Holdings and every contract we maintain. Richard's voice came out strangled. The partnership renewal, it's next week. Yes, I said simply. It is. Victoria grabbed the microphone back. This is ridiculous. Security, remove her. She's clearly delusional. But Richard was already shouting to someone in the crowd. David! David Chen Park! You're Zenith's legal counsel. Is this true? A man in an impeccable suit stood up from table 12. I'd asked David to attend tonight, knowing this moment would come. It's true, Ms. Parker is our new CEO. I have the documentation right here. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in shocked whispers that built to a roar. Victoria's recovery was swift and vicious. She cut the microphone cable with a violent yank, the feedback shriek making everyone wince. Technical difficulties, she announced brightly to the crowd. Security, please escort Ms. Parker out. She's obviously having some sort of episode. 2 guards moved toward me, their faces apologetic but determined. Victoria Whitmore signed their paychecks after all. She's delusional, Marcus added loudly, playing to the crowd. Stress eating has affected her mind. It's sad, really. We've tried to get her help. The guards reached for my arms. I didn't resist. Sometimes letting your opponent think they've won is the best strategy. James still wouldn't look at me, studying his Italian leather shoes as if they held the secrets of the universe. This is what happens, Victoria announced to her audience, when you marry beneath your station. Mental illness, delusions of grandeur. She probably read about Charles Parker online and constructed this fantasy. The crowd was buying it. I heard murmurs of, poor thing, and how embarrassing, as the guards led me off the stage. But I caught Richard's eye as I passed. He was frantically typing on his phone, his face cycling through expressions like a slot machine. They deposited me at an empty table in the back, the one reserved for the catering staff's breaks. Victoria had already returned to her presentation, smoothly transitioning into the charity auction as if nothing had happened. Crisis averted, she purred into a new microphone. Now, who'll start the bidding on this magnificent Cartier piece? But I wasn't watching her. I was counting down on my phone's clock. David Chen Park had left his table and was walking toward the stage with his briefcase. Richard Whitmore was pushing through the crowd from the other direction. In exactly 10 seconds, everything would change. 10, 9, 8. I sat alone at that back table, watching Victoria bask in her perceived victory. She was auctioning off jewelry now, each piece a testament to excess. The crowd had already forgotten about me, just another bit of drama in their glittering lives. "The crazy wife is handled," I heard someone say. "Poor James." "Victoria always knows how to manage these situations," another added. So composed. James had finally found his spine, or so it seemed. He took the microphone from his mother. "I apologize for that disruption. My soon-to-be ex-wife has been under tremendous stress. We'll ensure she gets the help she needs." The words should have hurt. Instead, I felt only cold clarity. Every betrayal was being documented, recorded by hundreds of phones. Evidence for what was coming. Marcus was already on his phone with someone, probably their lawyer. I caught fragments: mental evaluation, an expedited divorce, an unfit spouse clause. Victoria returned to the microphone. "Let's not let one disturbed individual ruin our beautiful evening. The Whitmore family remains committed to excellence, in business and in charity." Applause thundered through the ballroom. She'd won, or thought she had. The security guards still hovered near my table, making sure I wouldn't cause more trouble. But Richard Whitmore had reached the stage, and his face was the color of old paper. He grabbed Victoria's arm, whispering urgently. She brushed him off, irritated by the interruption. David Chen Park was setting up his laptop at a side table, connecting it to the ballroom's projection system. The tech crew, confused, allowed it. He had Zenith Holdings credentials after all. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Ready when you are." I stood up. The guards moved closer, but I simply walked toward the stage, holding my phone high. "I haven't finished," I said clearly. Richard Whitmore suddenly lunged for the microphone, practically wrestling it from Victoria's manicured grip. His usual composure had shattered completely. "Everyone stop! Please, there's been a terrible mistake." Victoria tried to reclaim the microphone. "Richard, what are you doing? You're making a scene." "No," he said firmly, holding her back with one arm. "You've made the scene. I've just realized who we've been insulting." The ballroom buzzed with confusion. Marcus stepped forward. "Dad, she's nobody. Just a gold digger with delusions. She's Charles Parker's daughter," Richard's voice cracked. "I just confirmed it with 3 board members. Charles Parker, our biggest partner. She owns Zenith Holdings." The whisper started immediately, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. Several people were already on their phones, verifying. The wonderful thing about the ultra-wealthy: they always fact-check when money's involved. "That's impossible," Victoria said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "She's a public school teacher. She lives in Queens. She refused my $1 million wedding gift." "Because she didn't need it," Richard said quietly. "Charles Parker was worth $2 billion, and he left it all to her." I watched the blood drain from Victoria's face as the implications hit her. The partnership contract, the renewal next week, the clause about executive conduct. "Anna," Richard turned to me, his voice now pleading. "Please, come back to the stage. There's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly, even without a microphone. "Because I heard your wife quite clearly. Fat pig, wasn't it? Your son called me worthless. My husband agreed I should sign divorce papers. Which part did I misunderstand?" David Chen Park chose that moment to project the first document onto the ballroom's massive screen. The Zenith Holdings letterhead had never looked more beautiful. I walked back to that stage with the measured pace of someone who had already won but was polite enough to let everyone else figure it out. The security guards parted like the Red Sea. Amazing how fast respect returns when money enters the conversation. Anna, please, Richard said, extending his hand to help me up the stairs. I ignored it, climbing on my own. Victoria stood frozen, her Chanel gown suddenly looking like expensive armor that couldn't protect her. Marcus had gone pale under his spray tan. James finally looked at me, his eyes wide with dawning horror. I took the microphone gently from Richard's shaking hand. Should I tell them or should you? Tell us what? Someone shouted from the crowd. David clicked to the next slide. My official appointment letter filled the screen, complete with board signatures and the Zenith Holdings seal. 2 weeks ago, I said calmly, I inherited my father's company, Zenith Holdings. We control strategic partnerships worth approximately $8 billion globally. Whitmore Industries represents one of those partnerships, a $500 million exclusive distribution deal that expires next week. The math was simple enough for everyone to follow. Without Zenith, Whitmore Industries would lose 60% of its revenue stream overnight. But that's not the interesting part, I continued. David, could you show them clause 14.3? The contract appeared on screen, with one section highlighted in yellow. Any executive officer found guilty of public discrimination, harassment, or conduct unbecoming of corporate leadership shall result in immediate partnership termination without possibility of renewal for a minimum of 5 years. Now, I said, turning to Victoria, would you like to repeat what you called me? I'm sure everyone would love to hear it again. We have about 500 witnesses, plus, I gestured to the phone still recording, video evidence. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The email on the screen was dated 2 weeks ago, digitally signed and notarized. Every board member's signature was visible, including 3 who were in this very ballroom. As of October 15th, I read from the projection, Anna Catherine Parker is hereby appointed Chief Executive Officer of Zenith Holdings, with full authority over all partnerships, contracts, and strategic decisions. This can't be real, Victoria stammered. You're a teacher. You wear clothes from Target. You drive a Honda. By choice, I replied. My father taught me that real wealth doesn't need to announce itself. Unlike some people, I don't need Chanel to feel valuable. Marcus tried to salvage the situation. Even if this is true, you can't just cancel a contract because your feelings were hurt. David clicked to the next slide, a recording timestamp from tonight's event. Actually, she can. Your mother called Ms. Parker a fat pig at 9:47 p.m. You called her worthless at 9:48 p.m. Both statements were made in your capacity as executive officers of Whitmore Industries at a company-sponsored event in front of clients and partners. Textbook violation of Clause 14.3. The crowd was dead silent now. You could hear the ice sculptures melting. But more importantly, I continued, let's discuss why this contract matters so much to you, Victoria. Another slide. Whitmore Industries financial statements. Without Zenith's distribution network, Whitmore Industries has approximately 90 days of operating capital. After that, I let the pause hang. Bankruptcy. You're bluffing, Victoria whispered, but her voice cracked. 3 men in expensive suits stood up from their tables simultaneously. I recognized them from the photos in my father's office, Zenith board members. Ms. Parker, one called out, we support whatever decision you make regarding the Whitmore contract. The power shift was visible, like watching an avalanche in slow motion. David Chen Park approached the stage carrying a leather portfolio. His 30 years of corporate law experience showed in every measured step. This wasn't his first boardroom bloodbath, just his first in a ballroom. For the record, David announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd destroyed bigger companies than Whitmore, I have here the original partnership contract, notarized and witnessed. I also have recordings of tonight's events, which I've been documenting since Ms. Parker's arrival. He'd been recording everything. Of course he had. I'd asked him to attend specifically for this purpose. The violation is clear and actionable, David continued. Multiple executive officers of Whitmore Industries engaged in public discrimination against the CEO of their primary partner company. The contract terms are unambiguous. Victoria found her voice. You set us up. You knew who you were and let us. Let you what? I interrupted. Show your true character? Reveal how you treat people you consider beneath you? I didn't make you call me a pig, Victoria. I didn't force Marcus to call me worthless. I certainly didn't compel my husband to stand silent while his family destroyed his wife's dignity. James flinched as if slapped. Furthermore, David added, pulling out another document, I have here 3 affidavits from Whitmore Industries employees documenting a pattern of discriminatory behavior from Mrs. Victoria Whitmore. It seems tonight wasn't an isolated incident. Richard grabbed the documents, scanning them rapidly. His face went from pale to ashen to slightly green. Margaret from accounting, he read. Terminated after gaining weight during chemotherapy. Tom from logistics, demoted after his son came out. Jennifer from marketing, passed over for promotion 3 times with comments about her unfortunate appearance. Those were business decisions, Victoria protested. Were they? I asked. Because they look like patterns to me, patterns that Zenith Holdings cannot associate with. The 3 Zenith board members had moved closer to the stage. Jonathan Hartley, whom my father had trusted for 20 years, spoke first. Ms. Parker, we've reviewed the situation. The board unanimously supports enforcing Clause 14.3. Then something unexpected happened. A woman in St. Laurent stood up from table 3. I'm Catherine Walsh, CEO of Walsh Retail Group. If Zenith terminates the Whitmore contract, we're interested in discussing that distribution network. Another CEO stood, then another. Within seconds, 12 major company leaders were on their feet, all eyeing the opportunity like sharks scenting blood in the water. You see, I explained to the stunned Whitmores, Zenith's distribution network is the gold standard. Companies wait years for a partnership slot. If I terminate your contract tonight, I'll have 20 offers by morning. Marcus tried one last desperate play. This is corporate assassination. You married James just to destroy us. Actually, David interjected, Ms. Parker signed a prenuptial agreement refusing any claim to Whitmore assets. She wanted nothing from your family except respect, which evidently was too much to ask. Richard Whitmore suddenly spoke up, his voice heavy with resignation. Anna's right. I've watched this for 3 years, said nothing while my wife and son tortured this young woman. I'm ashamed. He turned to the crowd. Everyone here saw what happened tonight. We have no defense. Richard, Victoria gasped. Whose side are you on? The side that doesn't end up bankrupt, he replied flatly. Then, to me, what do you want? I smiled. Not cruelly, not vindictively, just the smile of someone who'd waited 3 years for this moment. I want a public apology. Then we discuss new terms. And Victoria? I looked directly at her. You're going to resign as CEO tonight. The ballroom erupted. The look on Victoria's face was priceless, but the best part is still coming. You see, when someone tries to humiliate you publicly, they often forget that public accountability works both ways. If you've ever wanted to see a bully face real consequences, not just words, keep watching. And remember, sharing this story might help someone else standing in their own battlefield of dignity. Victoria's denial came out as a shriek. This is fake. It has to be fake. She's nobody, a nothing, a teacher. I nodded to David, who connected his laptop to the ballroom's sound system. Within seconds, the massive speakers filled with a familiar voice, the president of Zenith's board on speakerphone. This is William Sterling. I confirm that Anna Catherine Parker is the rightful CEO of Zenith Holdings, appointed by unanimous board decision following Charles Parker's passing. She has full authority over all partnership decisions. Mr. Sterling, I said clearly, You're on speaker with approximately 500 witnesses. Could you confirm the value of the Whitmore partnership? 500 million over 5 years, with exclusivity rights worth another 200 million. Ms. Parker, do you require board support for any decisions tonight? That might be necessary. You have it. The board is watching the live stream. We're appalled by what we've witnessed. Live stream. David had been streaming to the board this entire time. Victoria's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Marcus hadn't caught her, his own face now the color of spoiled milk. Additionally, Sterling's voice continued, I'm obligated to inform you that 3 other Zenith board members are present in that ballroom. Gentlemen, please identify yourselves. Besides Jonathan Hartley, 2 more men stood, titans of industry both, each worth more than the entire Whitmore empire. We witnessed everything, one said simply. Every insult, every moment of harassment, every violation of basic human dignity. The crowd was pulling back from the Whitmores like they had something contagious. In their world, being on the wrong side of money was the only real disease. So, I said, taking control again. Fake? Should we call more witnesses? Or are you ready to discuss terms? I'm terminating the partnership, I announced, my voice steady as a judge delivering a verdict. Effective immediately. The gasp that went through the ballroom could have sucked the oxygen from the room. $500 million vanishing with 5 words. No! Marcus lunged forward. You can't! We'll sue! David held up the contract. On what grounds? The violation is clear, documented, and witnessed. Any court in the country would side with Zenith. The company will collapse, Richard said quietly, all fight gone from his voice. 20,000 employees, gone. I'm aware, I replied, which is why I'm willing to discuss alternative arrangements, but they come with conditions. Victoria found her voice, though it came out as a whisper. What conditions? First, you resign as CEO. Tonight. Effective immediately. Never. Then Whitmore Industries declares bankruptcy by Christmas. I turned to the crowd. I'm sure everyone here would love to buy your assets at liquidation prices. Several heads nodded eagerly. Corporate vultures, all of them. Second, I continued, Marcus forfeits any claim to executive positions at Whitmore Industries. Ever. You can't dictate. I can and I will. Third, James becomes CEO. That stunned everyone, including James. He stared at me as if I'd spoken in tongues. But most importantly, I said, moving closer to Victoria, you apologize, right now, into that microphone. To me, to every employee you've discriminated against, and to everyone here who watched you try to destroy another human being for sport. I'd rather die, Victoria hissed, than your company does instead. I turned to walk away. David, prepare the termination paperwork. Wait! Richard grabbed my arm. Please, Anna, give us a moment. He pulled Victoria aside, whispering furiously. Marcus joined them, gesticulating wildly. James remained frozen, staring at me with something like awe. The Whitmore family huddled like conspirators while 500 of New York's elite watched in fascinated silence. This was better than any theater performance they'd paid thousands to attend. I stood perfectly still, counting down in my head. 60 seconds. That's all I'd give them. 40 seconds, I announced. Victoria's whispered protests grew more frantic. Marcus was actually crying now, his perfect facade cracking like cheap plaster. Richard's voice rose and fell, urgent and commanding. 20 seconds. James finally moved, walking toward me with purpose. The crowd parted for him, unsure what to expect. Anna, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm sorry. I failed you as a husband. I stood there while they tore you apart, and I said nothing. Did nothing. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but 10 seconds. Mom! James turned to Victoria. Apologize. For once in your life, choose the company over your pride. 5 seconds. Victoria broke free from Richard's grip and grabbed the microphone. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. 4. 3. I apologize. 2. I'm sorry for everything. I held up my hand, stopping the countdown at 1. Be specific, I said coldly. What are you sorry for? Victoria's face crumpled. The great Victoria Whitmore, Queen of Manhattan society, began to cry. Not gentle tears. Ugly, humiliating sobs that smeared her perfect makeup. I'm sorry for calling you a pig, for treating you as less than human, for trying to destroy your marriage, for being a monster. And? And I resign. Effective immediately. I resign as CEO of Whitmore Industries. The words echoed through the ballroom like a death knell, or perhaps a rebirth. Richard Whitmore stepped forward, pulling a document from his jacket pocket. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. Since we're confessing tonight, he said, his voice carrying the weight of years, I have something to add. Victoria looked at him in confusion. Richard, what are you doing? Something I should have done years ago. He held up the papers. This is my will, updated last week after I saw how Marcus treated a janitor in our building. He made the man cry over a water spot on his shoe. Marcus's spray-tanned face went white. Dad, no. I'm leaving everything to James, the entire estate, all my personal holdings in Whitmore Industries, everything. The crowd gasped. Even I hadn't expected this. You can't, Marcus screamed. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who did everything right. You did everything your mother taught you, Richard corrected, which is why you're exactly like her, cruel, entitled, and without a shred of humanity. He turned to James. You married for love, not money. You chose someone your mother despised because you saw her worth. That takes courage I never had. This is because of her, Victoria pointed at me. She's turned you against us. No, Richard said simply. You turned me against you. Every cruel comment, every person you stepped on, every life you destroyed for sport. I enabled it for 30 years. I'm done. He handed the will to David. Mr. Chenpark, would you verify this is legally binding? David scanned it quickly. Witnessed, notarized, and filed with the court, completely legitimate. Marcus collapsed into a chair, his entire world evaporating in front of 500 witnesses. So, Richard said to me, James will be CEO. Is that acceptable for maintaining the partnership? Victoria Whitmore fell to her knees, the sound of her Chanel gown hitting the stage floor audible in the horrified silence. The Queen of Manhattan high society, kneeling in front of the fat pig she'd tried to destroy. Please, she sobbed, mascara streaming down her cheeks in black rivers. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was wrong, I was horrible. The words poured out of her like a dam breaking. I was jealous. You refused my money. You had James's love without trying. You were everything I pretended to be, accomplished, educated, independent. I have nothing without the Whitmore name. Nothing. Marcus tried to run. Actually tried to flee the ballroom, but security, the same security his mother had ordered to remove me, blocked his exit. Let me go, he shouted. I don't have to stay for this. Actually, you do, David said calmly. There's the matter of the embezzlement. Another gasp from the crowd. This night kept delivering. What embezzlement? Richard demanded. David pulled out more papers. Mr. Marcus Whitmore has been siphoning funds from the Charity Foundation. Tonight's gala? Half the donations were being redirected to his personal accounts. I have the evidence here, provided by a whistleblower in accounting. Margaret from accounting stood up, the woman Victoria had fired during chemotherapy. I kept records of everything before I was terminated. Everything. The phones were out in force now, everyone recording the complete destruction of the Whitmore dynasty. By morning, it would be on every society blog, every gossip site, every social media platform. Please, Victoria begged again, still on her knees. Anna, please, don't destroy us completely. I looked down at her, this woman who'd tortured me for 3 years, and felt pity. Stand up, I said quietly. Have what dignity you have left. The dominoes fell fast after that. 5 major investors approached Richard before Victoria even got to her feet, each one formally withdrawing their support from Whitmore Industries under her leadership. Hartley Ventures is pulling our 100 million, one announced. Cascade Capital is withdrawing all funding, another added. Within minutes, 300 million in backing had evaporated. The board of directors for Whitmore Industries had been watching everything. Several were in the audience. The chairman stood up, his voice carrying absolute authority. Emergency board meeting right now. This ballroom will suffice. He looked at Victoria with disgust. The motion is simple. Remove Victoria Whitmore as CEO, effective immediately. The vote was called right there, in front of everyone. 7 board members present, 2 participating by phone. All in favor of removing Victoria Whitmore? 7 hands rose. The 2 on the phone confirmed their yes votes. Motion carried unanimously. Victoria Whitmore, you are terminated. James Whitmore, will you accept the position of CEO? James looked at me, then at his father, then back at me. I accept, but with one condition. Anna serves as strategic advisor with full veto power over major decisions. That's irregular, the chairman began. That's non-negotiable, James interrupted, finding his spine at last. She just saved this company from bankruptcy. She deserves a voice in its future. The board huddled, whispered, then nodded. Accepted. Marcus was being escorted out by actual police now. David had called them regarding the embezzlement. He screamed the entire way, blaming everyone but himself. You did this, he shouted at me. You destroyed our family. No, I replied calmly. You destroyed yourselves. I just held up a mirror. The crowd parted as security led him away, their phones still recording every second of his downfall. James approached me slowly, as if I might disappear. The man who'd stood silent while his family devoured me finally found his voice, but it came too late. Anna, I know I don't deserve. You're right. You don't. He flinched but continued. I was a coward, weak, pathetic. I let them hurt you because I was afraid of losing my position, my inheritance. I chose money over my wife. Yes, I said simply. You did. He dropped to one knee, right there in front of everyone. Please, give me another chance. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd once loved enough to marry despite his family's objections. The man who'd promised to protect me, to stand by me, to choose me above all others. Stand up, James. He did, hope flickering in his eyes. I pulled off my wedding ring, the Tiffany 6-carat diamond his mother had picked out because anything less would be embarrassing. I placed it in his palm. I forgive you, James. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean accepting the unacceptable. Anna, please. You had 3 years to stand up for me. 3 years of dinners where they mocked my career. 3 years of events where they introduced me as your charity case. 3 years, and not once did you say stop. The entire ballroom was silent, watching our marriage end in real time. You're going to be a good CEO, I continued. You're smart, capable when you choose to be. But you'll do it without me. The partnership remains intact, with conditions. But we're done, James. Respect isn't negotiable, and it can't be retroactively applied. I turned to David. I believe Victoria already prepared divorce papers. We can use those. I signed the partnership renewal with amendments that would have made Victoria weep if she hadn't already destroyed all her tear ducts. The new terms were precise, non-negotiable, and designed to ensure Whitmore Industries could never again become a weapon of cruelty. 300 million over 5 years instead of 500, I announced. The remaining 200 million will fund a new foundation for workplace dignity and anti-discrimination programs. Additionally, David read from the contract, any executive or board member found guilty of discrimination, harassment, or creating a hostile work environment will be immediately terminated with loss of all benefits and severance. The respect clause, I added, is now permanent and applies to all employees, partners, and associates. Violation means immediate contract termination. James signed without hesitation. His hand was steady now, as if losing me had somehow given him the backbone he'd lacked for 3 years. One more thing, I said, pulling out my phone. The security footage from tonight, the recordings, all of it goes into a sealed file. If any Whitmore ever speaks my name publicly, if any of you attempt to slander me or seek revenge, it all goes public. Every second of tonight's humiliation, played on repeat across every platform I can buy time on. Richard nodded. Understood. Victoria hadn't moved from her spot on the stage, still kneeling in her ruined designer gown. She looked like a cautionary tale about pride, which I suppose she was. I walked past her to the microphone one last time. To everyone here tonight, remember this. Money might buy you many things, but it can't buy class, it can't buy respect, and it certainly can't buy your way out of consequences. The Rolls-Royce from Zenith Holdings was waiting outside, my father's legacy now mine to command. 6 months later, I sat in my office at Zenith Holdings, looking at the Wall Street Journal's headline, The Whitmore Redemption, How James Whitmore Saved His Family's Empire. The article detailed his transformation from weak-willed son to decisive leader. Stock prices had recovered. The company culture had transformed completely. The discrimination lawsuits had been settled, with Margaret from accounting now heading their new diversity department. Victoria lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, ironic, considering how she'd mocked my bridge and tunnel origins. The divorce settlement Richard demanded had left her with barely enough to survive. She worked as a receptionist at a small firm, having been blacklisted from every major company in Manhattan. Marcus was serving 18 months for embezzlement. His fiancée, the senator's daughter, had broken the engagement via a public Instagram post that got 12 million likes. Richard had sold the penthouse and moved to a modest house in Connecticut. He sent me a letter every month, apologizing again and again. I never responded, but I didn't throw them away either. James had tried to call me exactly once, on what would have been our 4th anniversary. I didn't answer. He sent a single text. You saved us by leaving us. Thank you. As for me, Fortune magazine had just named me to their 40 under 40 list. The headline read, Anna Parker, the CEO who turned humiliation into $100 million lesson. The gala invitation sat on my desk, the Whitmore annual charity event. James had sent it with a note. You're always welcome, but I understand if you never want to see us again. I fed it to the shredder. Some stages weren't worth returning to, no matter how much they'd changed. My father would have been proud. The lesson I learned that night wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. Not the kind that comes from others seeing your worth, but the kind that comes from never forgetting it yourself, even when the whole world tries to convince you otherwise. They called me a fat pig, but I was a CEO. They said I was worthless, but I controlled their lifeline. They tried to erase me, but I had receipts, literal, legal, binding receipts. Here's what 3 years of silence taught me. Document everything, every insult, every slight, every moment they think you're too small to matter. Because power isn't about using those documents. It's about knowing you can. True power is sitting through a dinner where they mock your job while knowing you could end their company with one phone call. It's refusing $1 million bribe because your integrity is worth more. It's walking away from someone you love because staying would mean accepting less than you deserve. The Whitmores thought wealth was about what you could buy. My father knew it was about what you couldn't be bought for. Some people asked why I didn't reveal myself sooner, why I let them humiliate me for so long. The answer is simple. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. But let them show everyone else too. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to better relationships. The ones who respect them are the ones worth keeping. The ones who mock them? Well, they usually end up kneeling on a stage, mascara running, begging for mercy they never showed others. Remember, your worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. It's determined by your refusal to let them make you forget it. Document everything. Know your worth. And never, ever apologize for refusing to be anyone's pig. If this story resonated with you, remember, your worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. I'd love to hear about a time you stood up for yourself. Share in the comments below. And if you know someone dealing with family toxicity or workplace bullying, sharing this might remind them that dignity can't be taken, only surrendered. Subscribe for more stories about quiet strength winning over loud arrogance. Until next time, remember, document everything and never apologize for knowing your worth.